I hope you enjoyed the first video. As I stated before, I have been stumbling down this rabbit hole for a number of years, and the actual documentation I've found has been pretty interesting. This video, I wouldn't mind maybe just hearing back from you folks on any ideas, what you would like me to research, something you're curious about, whatever it may be. Constructive criticism is always welcome. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Kennedys and their unfortunate events, I guess we can call them. Back in 1963, JFK was assassinated by a supposed lone gunman. We all have been taught it was Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald, to give you an idea, could have been a Manchurian type of candidate. He could have been a victim of MK Ultra. A lot of people have said this. I haven't quite found that per se, but I have found some stuff that implicate the U.S. government in Kennedy's assassination. When Kennedy was shot that day, a lot of people were told that it was Lee Harvey Oswald, the lone gunman from the Book Depository building in Dallas. That is very much so untrue. What you have been told is a total lie. Now, to give you an idea of how Kennedy was going to change this country, he wanted to do away with the Federal Reserve and create a silver-backed U.S. currency. Now, our currency is backed by the Federal Reserve. It specifically says Federal Reserve Note on the front of it. Now, with that, I don't trust it at all. Because when I see Federal Reserve Note, I see just trust me, okay? That's it. Just trust me. That's what the Federal Reserve Note means to me. Now, with the silver-backed currency, it was going to say United States Note on it, meaning it was not put out by the Federal Reserve. You could trust this, and it actually held its weight in silver, I guess we could say. Kennedy also wanted to pull our troops out of Vietnam. It was going to take him around a year, and he was actually quoted saying that with Walter Cronkite, and I believe it was the White House Rose Garden when Cronkite interviewed him in the early 60s. So when Kennedy was saying all this stuff, that was his big mistake. Talking about getting rid of Vietnam, he said there was a dark and evil plot to enslave every man, woman, and children in this country, and before he left that great office, he was going to expose it. He mentioned he was going to do away with the Federal Reserve, and he was going to totally abolish the CIA. Now, I feel these are the factors that got him killed, especially doing away with the Federal Reserve and the CIA. George H.W. Bush definitely had a hand in killing Kennedy. If he wasn't the one that killed Kennedy himself, he definitely had a hand in orchestrating said assassination. Now, on that day, I actually found, while I was digging through the rabbit hole, a picture of Lee Harvey Oswald standing in the doorway of the Book Depository. And when he was standing there, that was about the same time as Kennedy was getting killed. So, a question you have to ask is, how did Oswald manage to kill Kennedy at street level from that perch way up there in the Book Depository? If he was on street level, there's no way he could have shot out that window. Now, another thing that comes to mind is people said they saw a rifle barrel sticking out of that window. I have a few Marine buddies that have stated if they were to do something like that, they wouldn't expose themselves, especially their gun barrel. One of these gentlemen is a scout sniper with the Corps, and he even laughs at the initial story. This gentleman is no longer with us, I should say. He has been gone for a couple years now. He's gone into hiding. And that's why I say he's no longer with us, because God only knows where this guy went. He just disappeared. So for all I know, he's dead. And he was on his soapbox, just like I am getting on, stating that there's no possible way for an average rifleman in the Marine Corps to make shots that are such skilled shots on a moving motorcade like this. And simple physics, I've always argued this. Some folks have said, well, Oswald did kill him. Well, if Oswald killed him, the shot came from behind him. If Oswald did kill him, coming from behind, his head would have gone forward with the centrifugal force of the bullet. Velocity will carry you. If I shoot you in the head from the front, your head's going to pop back. It's not going to go forward. It's going to go backwards. Same thing with Kennedy. So the grassy knoll, everybody talks about the grassy knoll this, the grassy knoll that. The shot came from over in that direction because his head went back and to the left of it. And the way the piece of his skull fragment came off, it popped over towards the left and to the back. Hence, we saw Jackie Kennedy trying to get out of the car. That was actually her trying to pick up the piece of Kennedy's skull that popped off when he got hit. Now, I've had a lot of naysayers say I'm crazy about this, and when I finally explain it to them, they've come around. They've drawn their own conclusions. They've looked at the Zapruder film, and they've watched all the factors that be, so to speak. So, with the Kennedys, especially JFK, he was about to do something that would save us all. And he also did great things for this country. He desegregated the South. I don't believe in segregation, and my grandparents never did. My grandmother, Grandma Lillian, actually used to piss and moan about how it was just wrong for so long for our country to do so. And Kennedy did that. Kennedy put forth the desegregation rule. And it stirred up a lot of shit. But that shit show was nothing compared to what actually transpired that day in Dallas. Now, the reason why I say George H.W. Bush had a hand, if not was the one that pulled the trigger, in killing Kennedy, he opened up a whole big bag of shit for control, the deep state, enslaving us, and taking our rights away bit by bit over the years. And being that one of the, I guess we could call him one of the higher ups at the time in the CIA, he didn't like that the CIA was going to be abolished. He didn't like that idea. He liked the idea of complete and utter control. He was part of the deep state, and so was his son. Now, when H.W. went ahead and brought Operation Northwoods to the table, Kennedy pretty much, so to speak, laughed him out of the Oval Office and said, there's no fucking way that we're going to do that to America or her people. To go to war with Cuba was stupid. You would have kicked off possibly a nuclear war with Russia, because that was one of Russia's allies. Russia was posting up nuclear weapons. There were pictures of Russian troops and their equipment in Cuba. And, well, things were real shaky because of the Bay of Pigs earlier in his administration. Kennedy found out way too much about what was going to happen with our country and how things were played out. Now, when it comes down to Robert Kennedy was supposedly killed by Sirhan Sirhan. And I say supposedly because Sirhan Sirhan says he doesn't remember anything about it. Now, maybe he was involved, but that goes to question about MK Ultra, which was a CIA mind control and hypnosis project that the CIA was running in our government. And why would he kill Bobby? What gripe does he have against Robert Kennedy? In that hotel kitchen, they found 2 different kinds of slugs when they did ballistics tests. They pulled 2 totally different slugs out of the walls. So that goes to tell you, anybody with half a brain can tell it that there was someone else there in that room. Whether he acted alone and he was just bullshitting all of us and saying, I don't remember doing that, I have no recollection, or it was his CIA handler with him and something went wrong with the MK Ultra programming inside Sirhan, and he had a change of heart, and he was trying to get Bobby out of there by firing willingly at a wall. You know, you can say it's speculative. It's all hearsay. Yes, in a way. But what I have found is it was his CIA handler. And I actually got cut off when I was looking into this. I, so to speak, had to bail out. I was crashing and burning and I didn't want to get caught. But the thing was, Sirhan was indeed a CIA mind control experiment. And if it's one thing you should think about is human will. The will of a human. If you are a good-hearted person and you are put under like that, it's going to conflict with the programming that they instill in you. Now, we all see it in movies. They'll call you up. They'll say a certain phrase like, for example, spaghetti and meatballs, and all of a sudden you go on a killing rampage and you kill a prominent political figure. It's not so cut and dry, but it pretty much is. Our government is run by a deep state. And Kennedy wanted to do away with that. Kennedy wanted to save us. He and his brother Robert. Now you have two gentlemen that have been killed at the hands of George H.W. Bush and the CIA, along with the deep state government in this country. And it wasn't just one party. It was deep state on both sides of the aisles, Republican and Democrat alike. And those are my acronyms, so to speak, my nicknames for the parties. Because they're both gangs. And their ideologies now, at this point. We have seen politicians come close to getting assassinated, such as Ronald Reagan. Anybody who speaks differently than the actual deep state speaks is a threat to the deep state agenda. The deep state consists of the banking cartels, the Rothschilds especially. The Clintons are now part of it. The Clintons have been part of it since Slick Willie was Democrat of Arkansas. And as for the Kennedys were trying to fight that. It was still weak then. The Bushes are definitely a big part of the deep state. Their interests in enslaving the American people is sickening. It's disgusting. George H.W. Bush, when he was president, I touched on how he had a hand in it, yes, but he also believed in a new world order where it's just rich and poor slaves. I don't know about you, but I definitely don't want to be a slave, and I don't want to be poor. But I also don't want to be dead. And as a slave, that's the same path you're going to go down. You're going towards an early death. And the Kennedys were trying to fix that. Without the Federal Reserve, we wouldn't see the inflation like we have today. For instance, my parents, when they bought their first home, it was a 3-family, triple-decker in the town that I was born in Central Mass. And they paid, I think it was $44,000 and change in 1981. Now we're talking 37, 38 almost years ago when they bought this building. $44,000 and change. That same building was up almost towards $300,000. It was like $280 something and change in the 90s when it went up for sale again. That's a big difference in just 15 years. Huge difference. And that's because of the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve is evil, folks. They're the ones with the deep state that control your interest rates, your gas taxes and prices, your housing prices, even car prices. These are just simple little things. And this is what I have found. This is what I have read personally in the light work that I have done. And when it comes down to the Kennedys, everybody says, oh, it's a curse, it's a curse, it's a curse. Maybe it's a curse. Maybe it goes back to old man Kennedy, Joseph Sr. During the bootlegging days, a lot of people went blind or died from his moonshine and his bootleg booze. It was poison. A lot of guys were doing that. They were trying to make money. Supply and demand during Prohibition. Fast forward to World War II. Joseph Kennedy Jr. was a pilot. Went down. Died. Sad. But everybody was said that Joe Jr. was supposed to be President of the United States. Unfortunately, that did not happen. He died in combat during World War II. So, JFK, after saving his crew during World War II on PT-109, decides to run for a Senate seat in Massachusetts. And he was a senator for a number of years. But he found stuff that he did not like and he did not approve of because he was a true humanitarian. I don't care what anybody says. Opinion is opinion. These are facts that I'm throwing at you. And when Kennedy actually won the election in the early 60s, he had plans in the 2 terms, and now I say 2 terms loosely because he would have definitely gotten elected to a 2nd term. In the 2 terms, he would have saved us. And the powers that be did not like that. Excuse me. There's a conspiracy, and I use it loosely as a conspiracy, that the baby boom generation was going to outnumber those nefarious powers that be. So what do we have to do? We had to thin the herd as a Department of Defense and a government. And in the 60s, we went off to Vietnam and we kept boosting troops, boosting troops, boosting troops. By 1965, I believe we had over 500,000 troops in South Vietnam alone. That number went up from there. By 1968, we had about 700,000 troops. We lost 58,000 and change brothers and sisters to that war. We needed to thin the herd. That is what it said, verbatim. We need to thin the herd of free thinkers. Now, the hippie generation, everybody said, well, look at the hippies. The hippies were for love and peace. The hippie craze was a government plant to hold down and destroy the rest of the herd. How do you get someone to stay down when you knock them down, so to speak? Drugs, partying, alcohol, anything that can kill off a herd and their free thinking and their free spirit. So when it came down to the Kennedys getting killed, the government said it needed to be done. In order to save the deep state, the government entities killed the Kennedy brothers because they didn't want 16 years of fixing the country. They wanted assholes like Johnson and Nixon and Ford, and then that communist Carter. The Kennedys were killed for an agenda that is dark and evil. And at the end of it, George H.W. Bush was behind most of it. Now, you guys can call me crazy, but I'm far from it. And after going through all this research and the stuff that I have done, I am disgusted by what our government has done. We are the land of the free because of the brave. My grandfathers fought in World War II. I had a great-grandfather fight in World War I. They fought for a better cause. They didn't fight to stop the spread of communism. Communism wasn't going to last. They just wanted to kill off a good part of the herd. They drafted kids, and I say kids because most of these kids were 18 and 19 years old that went off to Mount. And at the end of it, once they were done with the Kennedys, that was it. It was game over for us. We lost a big battle in losing the Kennedys. And if you think about it, if JFK had done away with that, we would actually be able to afford health care. We would be able to afford nice homes on a minimal salary. My grandparents did it. Hell, my parents, they didn't make much in the early 80s, but they were still able to pay $44,000 and change for a 3-family home that needed no work. Zero work. And 15 short years later, you were seeing that same house up in the 280s. So, I ask you to draw your own conclusion. Do your own thinking on what I am trying to teach you. Because in the end, if you're just going to sit there and listen to CNN and the lamestream media and do what they tell you to and think how they tell you to think, you're no better than just a goddamn lemming. You want to follow the sheep to the slaughter, be my guest. But I'm here to help. And I'm here to help you realize that Oswald did not kill Kennedy. Sirhan Sirhan did not kill Bobby. And your government is duping you like something out of a goddamn snake oil salesman playbook. Your freedoms are being wasted. It's up to us to do something. So in short, and at the end of this, I ask you, just like and subscribe if you want. Put some constructive criticism in. Let me know what you think. But I'm going to tell you right now, think freely. Don't listen to your goddamn history teachers and professors in school. Because what I found is not what they are teaching us. I thank you for your time.